The movie starts in Georgia with a truck driving up a hill. Inside, three people are going for a hike. Chris and a couple named Daniel and Alicia. Daniel gets out of the truck first to look at their campsite, then Chris whispers to Alicia about telling others about their relationship. Alicia, regretfully, doesn't want to get married to Daniel on Saturday. The fact that they are sleeping together and cheating on Daniel behind his back is their secret. After Daniel instructs them to begin walking, the two follow him and begin their hike. They discuss the peak that was once a battleground. As they walk, soldiers left a lot of landmines underground during the conflict. They kindle a bonfire in the center to start their night. As the stars in darkness appear, Chris declares Daniel and Alicia husband and wife. Just as they are ready to head to their tent, the couple enters their rental with joy and intoxication. Daniel begins to slowly undress as he approaches Alicia and plants a kiss on her top. Alicia tells Daniel to close the tent because Chris can see them from outside. Chris is watching them and getting upset. Daniel and Alicia keep being close while Chris puts out the fire. The sun begins to come up and Chris wakes up from a deep sleep in his tent. He sees a man hanging around Daniel and Alicia's things. He gets up slowly and walks to the man. Then he faces the man. They start to argue and Chris gets into a fight with the strange man. Chris had no idea that the stranger was Debbie, Daniel's buddy and a first responder for trekking until Alicia and Daniel arrived from a distance. Chris apologizes for what he did, and their tension begins to lessen. Debbie returns to the rear and grabs Alicia's camera. He promises to take a photograph of the three of them, and they all agree and pose for it. Because of the angle, Debbie tells them to make little adjustments. He wants them to move to the left where the view is really nice until what was expected happens. Chris steps on a landmine. Debbie begins to pause and tells him not to move at all. Daniel and Alicia start to feel scared because they don't know what to do, but Debbie says that he will get some help from the town, but it will take 4 hours. When they ask him how long it will be, he begins to walk away when Daniel yells at him to leave. Alicia and Daniel move to the back of the large rock. As the three of them experience a panic episode, they talk about how to keep Chris around and not abandon him. After hoping for a signal, Daniel's phone begins to ring. He then begins talking to the operator on the other end of the line about what they need: a helicopter and landmine specialists. As he prepares to hang up, he promises to inform Alicia that they are not saving thieves. Alicia is taken aback and unable to understand Daniel's words. His temper then erupts and he returns to Chris and confronts them both. Alicia had no idea that Chris had told Daniel everything. They both apologize to him, but it's too late because they discover that Daniel had planned it all along. The call is phony because there is no signal in, and he is so angry at them both that he refuses to accept their apologies and begins to gather his belongings before leaving them as well. He walks to a place far from where Debbie went, and he tells him to go have some beer and see some dancers. Meanwhile, they are working on a plan together when a strange man from the area approaches them. They ask him to help them dig the ground. Ilya, the man, and his dog. Ilya panics and hurries to them. They tell him what's going on, and in a desperate attempt to get his assistance, Ilya asks Alicia why she is with Chris, who is not her husband. Ilya consents to assist them, but he demands payment. Both of them warn him that they can only offer him what they have in return. When he tries to have an intimate moment with Alicia alone after receiving Il's okay, he begins searching through their belongings, locating Alicia's underwear and giving it to his dog so he can sniff it. He claims that he needs Alicia's underwear, the one she is wearing right now, in order to assist. Chris is now angry, but since their lives are in jeopardy, he has no other option. Chris tells Ilya that he has $380 and a credit card with him. Ilya agrees to take both options, but he says he doesn't want American money. What he really wants are her pants. Instead, Alicia said yes and started to go to her tent. On her way, Ilya stopped her and told her she had to take off her clothes in front of him. At first, she was unsure, but then she did what he asked. When she is holding her underwear, she hands it to Ilya and he takes it politely, smelling it as if it's brand new. Now that Ilya has what he wanted, he helps them by digging. He asks Alicia exactly what she wants him to do. Alicia tells him it needs to be 2 feet away and deep enough for Chris to jump into. He's digging in when Isla's bag rings with a radio. Chris and Alicia want him to call for assistance right away since they feel a little hopeful. The soup is done, he says to a friend named Sergey as he goes to his bag, but he's inside assisting the two stranded Americans. Alicia is frantic to call on the radio, but Chris gets frustrated and occasionally swears at Ilya, which offends him. If they choose not to, he threatens to not assist them. Alicia asks Ilya to lend her the radio, but he always wants something back. She feels upset and frustrated. She says that Chris is in trouble and doesn't have time to play a game. He is about to borrow his radio when he tosses Alicia's underwear and asks her to get it for him. Alicia is really angry but has no other option. Ilya asks her to act like a dog and crawl on the ground. It's awful and upsetting for her, but she still chooses to go after him. She gently gets on her knee, lies down, and moves like a dog. She takes it as she is about to head to the location of the underwear and begins to crawl over to Ilya. He tosses once more, but this time he claims that no dog is holding anything, rather he would like to do it in her mouth. Once more, Alicia locates the underwear, bites into it, snatches it, and carries it over to Ilya. Alicia speaks into Isla's radio now that he's Let them use it, but the other person doesn't speak English. Ilya is happy to help with translation when she asks him to, but as usual he demands something in exchange. Chris and Alicia feel annoyed and frustrated, but they think the best idea is to follow Ilis since he understands the language and knows where they are now. He is asking them to play a game. Alicia will take off her clothes each time he translates a word. Alicia is unhappy and won't do it. She tells him to go away and says they don't need his help anymore. She grabs the shovel and begins digging alone, but Ilya approaches her, and he informs her that the friend on the other end of the telephone, Sergei, is concerned about Ilya. He makes Ilya answer the phone and informs Sergei that he is okay while she is digging. Ilya is unable to express her worry because Sergei does not speak English. Ilya has to strip to let Sergei know she's okay now that she has total reign over them. Ilya begins speaking in Georan and discussing the topic with Sergei on the radio. Conversely, Ilya takes off her clothes. However, the gay ends when Chris orders Ilya to stop. Ilya becomes mad, picks up his stuff, and leaves. Ilya informs them, however, that Sergei is still discussing the soup with him. Ilya no longer cares for him and is furious. Ilya reaches for his shotgun and begins pointing it out to him. Ilya begins to flee as Chris is frantically talking with her. Ilya orders his dog to follow him. When they outsmart him in a fit of rage, he declares that Chris will pay for his actions. He dropped the shotgun and went after Ilya and his dog. Chris desperately looks for a chance to seize the shotgun. He plans how to retrieve the gun. He manages to seize the gun and demonstrate it to Ilya, who is currently keeping her hostage. Ilya is holding a knife. Chris and Ilya begin arguing and cursing one another, and Ilya becomes so angry and insane that she begins to harm Alicia. Chris may have shot Alicia. Therefore, he is unable to pull the trigger. Ilya gently moves away from Chris and disappears behind a boulder. As he takes advantage of the circumstance, she is coerced into joining him. Ilya begins to lie down in front of Alicia face down the rock and slowly but firmly undresses her bra and pants because she has no control over the situation. As Ilya begins to shag her repeatedly, Alicia lets out a heartbreaking howl of pain and disdain from a distance. Chris sees the person he loves being attacked by a local man who is acting wildly and violently. He is holding a gun, but he can't use it. When Ilya feels tired, Alicia starts acting wildly, which makes him even angrier. Ilya feels dizzy because Alicia hits him on the head with a rock. When Chris yells for Alicia to come over, he is about to shoot, but then the dog runs after him and bites him. He faints. When he hits the ground, he is sleepy and partly asleep. When Ilya tells him that the landmine is a fake, everything is a setup and they won't die with it, Chris finds himself lying down next to Alicia, who is battling for her life with numerous slashes on her neck and a lot of blood all over her body. While Ilya begins to leave them, Chris is yelling for assistance, but nobody appears to be listening. It's there in his arms. Alicia is dying. As time goes on, a family with a small daughter named Leah lives in the suburbs of Georgia. She and her mother are doing housework together, and she is talking to her about something when a young American tourist knocks on their door. He is disoriented and unsure of what to do. When asks for assistance, the GPS in his automobile died a time ago, so he asks for instructions. He is unable to comprehend Tanya, the mother, when she explains how to return to the city. He asks them, hoping they have an old map he can buy. Tanya says they don't have a map, but being friendly, Leah offers to print one from their computer for him, which lets him come into their house. The man who is lost is Chris. When Leah gives Chris the map, he asks them if there is a restaurant close by because he feels hungry. They don't have one, Tanya explains, so she invites him to join them for dinner. Chris accepts it with pleasure and strikes up a conversation with them like a tourist. On the far side of their house is a bee farm where Isle works. His dog keeps barking at the house, which makes him curious. When he goes outside for this reason, he instantly leaves his current task and heads to their house. He sees an odd boot from their doorstep as he enters. To his astonishment, Chris is the one conversing and dining with his family, and he becomes extremely anxious and terrified. Ilya is furious and takes his shotgun out into the foyer. Chris pursues him and informs him that although his rifle is unloaded, he is aware of this. Isla's legs get shot by Chris. After that, Tanya and Lika venture outside to observe the situation. They respectfully ask Chris what they can do, but they are afraid. Chris requests that Leah move her father into a room. While tying her mother, Chris wants Ilya to tell them everything, including what he did to Alicia and his games. Even though Ilya and Tanya are begging him and sobbing in desperation, all he claims is that he was intoxicated when he did it. In order to prove that he is acting intoxicated, Chris took some vodka from their kitchen. Chris is furious and begins to pull the trigger after rejecting Isla's justification and apology. The bullet was on his side as the tension increased, and he unintentionally shot Leah in the head, killing her. As Chris stares down at the lifeless Leor, she is startled and afraid. Chris is shown in the film struggling to suppress his terror, while also feeling guilty and ashamed of what he done in return for his life. He murders a young girl. The movie ends here. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.